All right. So as we were reading that second time, we should have been paying attention to some of the things that I pointed out on that second reading. So remember, pay attention to how many lines does he talk about the trip down to Harlem. If you count it up, I counted it up for you. 7 lines to this college on the hill above Harlem. I'm the only colored student in my class. The steps from the hill lead down into Harlem, through a park. Then I cross St. Nicholas, 8th Avenue, 7th, and I come to the Y, the Harlem Branch Y. So this whole, these 7 lines are talking about his trip down. So that must be significant. He doesn't have unlimited space to write a novel. So out of this entire poem, 7 lines, and you could do the math on what percentage of the poem it is, but it's probably a significant amount, at least 10%, I would imagine, or more, deal with this trip down to Harlem. Down to Harlem. Remember, Columbia University is on a hill above Harlem. So if I'm thinking aloud, what could this represent? Well, things that are below or beneath something might show inferiority. Superiority, something that's higher, might show superiority. All these people at Columbia University are white, except for him. He's the only colored person in his class, is what he said. The only black person in this class. So he could be saying that, the people at Columbia University look down on Harlem as a air of superiority. They feel like they're better than the people in Harlem. The speaker takes the elevator up to his room. So when he gets down to Harlem and he goes to the YMCA, the Y, the Harlem Branch Y, that's the YMCA, right? That's that building. He goes up in the elevator, though. He doesn't stay on that level down. He takes the elevator up to his room, which is on the same level. I mean, he's going up. He's elevated. So he's going up to his room, which is on the same level as Columbia University. He's up. He's elevated. He's on the same level. And, he writes this paper. So if I'm filling out this graphic organizer that you guys got today, look at the column. It says object that seems important. Well, the hill that leads down to Harlem and the elevator that leads up to the room. Those are objects that seem important. So the hill, the elevator, what might it represent? Harlem as being seen as inferior. What universal theme, or actually that should say big idea, what big idea does that relate to? And you might want to scratch that out so it's not confusing for you, but the universal theme, we're talking about big idea here. So what big idea does that relate to? Well, racism, inequality. So then what's the author saying about it? So here's where I want you to extrapolate, to pull out a theme from that big idea. Maybe the author is saying that black people may be treated as inferior, but are actually equal to white people, right? The black people in Harlem are equal to the white people at Columbia University, is what he might be saying with that whole elevator leads down, or hill down, elevator takes him back up. All right, so let's keep looking, pay attention to the gifts that he gets. So Bessie Smith, I already talked about this a little bit. Bessie Smith is a blues singer. She's the Empress of the Blues, and in the 1920s and 30s, that was her nickname. Johann Sebastian Bach, a German composer and musician. Bebop is a style of jazz that has fast tempo, instrumental virtuosity, blah, blah, blah. It's just this new hip music that came out in the 1940s. So if I'm looking at that, what seems important? The music that he likes seems important, right? What might it represent? Broad interests. He has broad interests. He doesn't just like one thing that you might see him and say, oh, he's probably just into that bebop. No, he has broad interests. What big idea does this relate to? Well, unity and racism again. I mean, you could say unity because he likes the different types of music that the professor likes too, but racism too, in the sense that the professor might see him, stereotype him as only liking one style of music. So what's the author saying about him? Well, black people and white people like the same things. We're all people, right? It doesn't matter if you're black or white. You can like the same things. And how about in The Giver? So we flip over to apply this to the giver. Well, what's an object that seems important? You guys can go back through the whole book up to this point and fill in this graphic organizer. So I'm going to give you one here. One object that seems important is the speaker in the community. You know, the speakers are all over the place, telling people what to do, monitoring people, it seems like. What might it represent? Well, it might represent the constant watchful eye of the elders. The elders are constantly seeing what everybody's up to, giving feedback. You know, Lily didn't have her hair in perfect bows, and Jonas took the apple. So it might represent the constant watchful eye of the elders. What big idea does this relate to? Control. It's all about control again. And what's the author saying from this symbol? What is the author saying about the big idea? How about those speakers are all over the place? They're everywhere. Things that become common in our lives can control us. Is that a big idea that, or a theme statement that you could take from that? You know, they're everywhere. Could I apply this to the diamond application method for a theme? You know, cave people today, alien babies 5,000 years from now. Think about in your life something that's so common that then it becomes a controlling thing. Think about your cell phone. A cell phone is, how many people would freak out if you didn't have your cell phone with you when you left for school and you couldn't find it, right? You got to constantly check it. You got to update, see what other people are doing. So that can become a means of control. It's so common in your life that if you are without it, it can control you. You can freak out. You can go through withdrawals, and it becomes a controlling mechanism in your life. So as you read, I want you to use that graphic organizer and record symbols, things that you've noticed in the giver. What symbols do you see that are emerging in the giver or already have popped up in the giver? And you're going to read through the end of chapter 20, continue to annotate, and let's say you're going to make 3 more entries in the graphic organizer for symbols. You're going to find 3 more symbols for the giver as you're reading and what you've read in the past. So you're going to have to actually go back into it and start looking for symbols in the giver.